Welcome to Deep Fear, where your darkest nightmares turn real. Tonight's story may just keep you awake, so let's start the video. And don't forget to subscribe. This happened in the fall of 2021. I had just moved to a small town in Oregon to get away from the city and take some time to figure out my life. I was 26, single, out of work, and just burnt out. I figured a slower pace would help. The town was quiet, barely 4,000 people, and surrounded by dense forest and winding hills. The locals called it peaceful. I called it isolated. But I didn't mind. There was this park near the edge of town called Raven's Pine. It wasn't huge or anything, just a few hiking trails, a man-made lake, and a bunch of scattered pine trees that stretched out into the woods. But it was beautiful in a gloomy kind of way, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking through someone else's memory. I started going there every evening. I liked the quiet. No honking horns, no sirens, just wind in the trees and gravel crunching under my shoes. The first few weeks were normal, peaceful even, until I saw the man by the water. I remember it clearly. It was October 12th. The sky had this grayish tint like it was going to rain, and I was walking the eastern loop of the lake trail. That trail's more isolated than the others. Barely any people use it. I was about halfway through my walk when I noticed someone standing near the water's edge. He wasn't moving, just standing. From a distance, it looked like he was staring out over the lake. His hands were at his sides, stiff. I figured he was maybe taking a moment to enjoy the view. Nothing weird about that. But something made me slow down. Maybe it was the way he was standing, totally still. No head movement, no shifting weight, just completely motionless. It looked unnatural. I don't usually stare, but something about him just made my stomach feel tight. His clothes were dark, maybe black, and I couldn't make out his face. He was standing in this slight dip by the water, maybe 30 feet from the trail. I stopped walking, and I swear, the second I did, he turned his head toward me. Not slowly, not gradually. It was like he snapped into motion. I couldn't see his eyes, too far, but I knew he was looking directly at me. He didn't move otherwise, just stood there, tilted head, and stared. I waved awkwardly. No response. So I did what any normal person would do and just kept walking. But for the rest of the trail, I kept glancing over my shoulder. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about him, how still he was, how quickly his head turned, how his arms never moved. The next morning, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just deep in thought. Maybe I was being paranoid. But I didn't go back to the park that evening, or the next. 3 days later, I convinced myself to go again, in the daylight this time. I figured I'd feel safer. The trail was calm. A few people walked their dogs. A couple joggers passed me. I didn't see the man. By the time I reached the same area near the lake, I actually started laughing to myself. I had creeped myself out for nothing. But then I noticed something down by the water, right where the man had been standing. It was a shoe, just one. A black boot, partly buried in the mud, and it looked old, like it had been there for weeks. I stared at it for a long time. Something about it didn't feel right. I stepped off the trail and walked down toward it, the mud sucking at my shoes. I crouched down and reached out, but as soon as my fingers touched the leather, I heard a splash behind me. I turned fast, but there was nothing, just the ripples of water reaching the edge of the lake. No animals, no people. The air was dead still. I didn't take the shoe. I backed away slowly and returned to the trail, walking faster than before. That time I didn't look back. That night I had a dream. I was walking through the park at night. Everything looked twisted, like the trees were taller and the sky was too low. I heard whispering, but I couldn't make out the words, just voices. Then I saw the lake, and he was there again. But this time he wasn't just standing. He was kneeling in the water, facing the trees, with his arms stretched out wide, like he was offering himself to something. Behind him, something moved in the water, something big. I couldn't see it clearly. It was like a shadow under the surface. But it reached out and grabbed him. He didn't scream, he didn't fight. He let it pull him under. I woke up gasping. My bed was soaked with sweat, and for a split second, I swore I could still hear water dripping. The next day, I stayed home. But that evening, I got curious. I Googled Raven's Pine Park missing person. I didn't expect to find anything. But there was something. An article from 1996. Local teen vanishes near lake trail. Boot found on shoreline. My chest got tight. I clicked on the article. It was short. A 17-year-old named Carter Ellman had gone hiking alone and never returned. His parents reported him missing the next day. The only thing search and rescue found was his left boot, half buried in the mud. Same trail, same spot. The article said the case went cold. No remains ever found. I closed my laptop and just sat there. I couldn't explain the feeling, but it felt like I had touched something I wasn't supposed to. That night, I dreamed again. But this time, I wasn't watching from a distance. This time, I was in the water. Let me know if you'd like to continue with Chapter 2, and I'll keep building the mystery and horror from here. It will keep escalating, with creepy realism and a haunting ending, just like a Mr. Nightmare classic. The second dream shook me worse than the first. I was floating just under the surface of the lake, eyes open, lungs not needing air. Everything was murky. My limbs didn't move, but I could still see through the water. Trees leaned over the shoreline like they were watching, and on the far side of the lake, something was walking into the water. A figure, slow and steady, arms by its side. The same man. He didn't make ripples. He didn't make a sound. But as he walked deeper, the water began to boil around him, and the dream faded into blackness. When I woke up, my window was open. I hadn't opened it. The breeze coming through smelled like wet pine and something else. Something rotten. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But you know that feeling when something's just wrong and you can't get rid of it? Like a splinter in your mind? That was me for the next few days. Every night I heard things. Soft creaks in the house, distant rustling outside my bedroom window, weird static from my phone even though it had full signal. I told myself it was just paranoia, but I couldn't stop thinking about the boot. Or that boy, Carter. Or the fact that someone, or something, had been in that exact spot at the lake, watching me. Finally, I decided to talk to someone about it. There's a guy in town named Bill Torrance. He's maybe in his late 60s, ex-park ranger. People said he worked at Raven's Pine for almost 30 years before he retired. I found him at the local diner and bought him a coffee. I started casual, asking about the park, how safe it was, if people ever got lost out there. He looked me over, like he already knew why I was asking. Then he said something that stuck with me. That park's been off for a long time, since before I started. You ever notice how all the trails circle the lake, but none go through the woods past it? I nodded. He continued. There's a reason. A long time ago, we had a few hikers wander off the main paths. 2 were found. The third wasn't. I asked if that was Carter Ellman. He paused, then nodded. Carter was the last. After him, we stopped letting volunteers work alone. Some staff quit. I stayed. But I learned real quick to avoid the lake near dusk. The woods back there. They don't behave the way they should. I asked what he meant. The trees move, he said flatly. Sometimes you hear whispering, like the forest is breathing. If you're not careful, you start seeing things. And if you follow them, you don't come back. I didn't know what to say. Then Bill looked at me, real serious. You saw something, didn't you? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He pulled a napkin toward him and started drawing. Rough lines, a circle, an X through part of it. It was a map of the lake. He pointed at the far side, near the east trail. Here, this is where it starts. But the real place, the part they fenced off back in the 80s, that's up past the ridge, about a half-mile into the trees. Locals call it the Hollow. You don't go there. I asked him why not. He said, because once you hear your name out there, it's already too late. I should have stopped, should have just moved or gotten out of town, but some part of me was hooked. I needed to know what was going on in that park, what I had actually seen. So I went back. One last time. It was a Wednesday evening, a little past 6. I waited until the park was nearly empty. I brought a flashlight, a water bottle, and a hunting knife I kept in my glove compartment. Not that I thought it would help. I followed the eastern trail to the spot near the lake. The water looked still, almost glassy. The boot was gone. No sign anyone had been there. But I saw it, just past the trail, hidden behind a patch of thick undergrowth, a gap in the fence. It looked like it had been peeled back, bent outward like someone, or something, had come through from the other side. I hesitated for a second, then stepped through. The woods beyond were darker, thicker. The moment I left the trail, everything went quiet. No birds, no wind, just silence. I followed a faint path uphill, just like Bill had described. My flashlight beam bounced between the trees, but it didn't help much. The forest swallowed the light. After maybe 20 minutes of walking, I saw it. The Hollow. It was a wide clearing, surrounded by twisted pine trees that all leaned inward slightly, like they were watching the center. And in the middle of it was a circle of stones, smooth, blackened, and arranged in perfect symmetry. I stepped closer. The air inside the circle felt colder, heavier. I knelt down and touched one of the stones. It was warm. And then I heard it. Nate. A whisper, soft, close, almost like it came from behind my ear. I spun around. Nothing there. Nate, come see. The voice again, this time from the trees. I backed up, heart pounding. My flashlight flickered, then died completely. Total darkness. That's when I saw them. Eyes, dozens of them, all around the clearing. Some high, some low, all staring at me from the shadows. No bodies, just eyes. And then, they moved. Shapes began emerging from between the trees. Tall, thin figures. Long arms, no faces. They moved like they were gliding. I turned and ran. Branches whipped past my face. My boots slammed into the earth, slipping on mud and roots. I didn't look back. I just kept running until I saw the fence again. I dove through it, scraping my arm, and didn't stop until I reached my car. When I slammed the door and locked it, I finally looked back. The trail was empty. I didn't go back to that park. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. And I didn't dream. Not anymore. Because I knew. I hadn't just seen something strange out there. Something saw me. I thought I was safe once I left Raven's Pine. I told myself whatever I saw, whatever I heard, was trapped inside that park. Or in my head. Or in the stories old men tell each other over coffee. But that was before the knock at my window. It happened 3 nights after I visited the Hollow. I'd been jumpy since that night, sleeping with the lights on, knife under my pillow. Every creak made my chest tighten. I hadn't told anyone what really happened. Not even Bill. Around 2:40 in the morning, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was the wind, or a branch, but then it came again, clearer this time. Tap, tap, tap. My bedroom is on the second floor. That window is 12 feet off the ground. I sat up slowly. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The window faced the woods behind my rental house, and right there, outside the glass, was a hand, a pale, thin hand, fingers too long, tapping the window gently, and behind the hand, a face. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My body froze. The face was wrong. No eyebrows, no lips, just pale skin and dark, sunken sockets where eyes should be. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It just smiled. Then it mouthed something. One word. Come! I snapped out of it and grabbed my flashlight. When I looked back, it was gone. I ran downstairs, turned every light on, and didn't sleep that night. Around 5 a.m., I packed a bag, jumped in my car, and drove to the next town over to stay in a cheap motel. But even there, I didn't feel safe. That morning, I called Bill. I told him everything. The dreams, the figure at the lake, the hollow, the things I saw in the trees, and now, the thing at my window. He didn't sound surprised. It left the hollow, he said quietly. They're not supposed to be able to leave. I asked him what they were. His answer chilled me. Echoes, that's what the old records call them. Spirits that don't belong to one body, they cling to places. But if you disturb them, if you see them, they remember you. I asked how to get rid of it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You have to go back. You have to return what it gave you." I didn't understand what he meant. But then I remembered the boot, the whisper, the circle of stones, and the dream. Something had passed to me, a piece of it. That's why I kept dreaming. That's why it knew my name. I didn't leave empty-handed. I left marked. I stayed awake through the next night, watching the window. Nothing came. But I knew it was close. The air smelled like pine again. The walls creaked like trees, and the shadows in the corner of the room didn't match the light. The next day, I drove back to Raven's Pine. It felt wrong as soon as I pulled in. The parking lot was empty. Even the ranger's post was locked up. I parked, got out, and walked straight to the breach in the fence. I didn't even bother with the trail. The woods were darker than before. Every step felt heavier, like the air was thicker, almost like walking through water. I reached the hollow faster than I expected. The stone circle was there, untouched. But this time, there was something inside it. A small object, sitting perfectly in the center of the stones. My flashlight beam shook as I aimed it. It was the boot, the same one I had seen at the lake, except now it was clean, like new. No mud, no wear, and stuffed inside the boot was a photograph. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a picture of me, standing in the park, from behind a tree, dated 2 days ago. That was enough. I dropped the photo and the boot in the center of the stone circle and stepped back. And I said out loud, "Take it back! I don't want it!" The air shifted. The trees creaked. And then I heard screaming. Not loud, not panicked, but hundreds of overlapping voices screaming just beneath the surface of the air, like radio static mixed with agony. I covered my ears and ran. I don't remember the way out. Just trees whipping past, the sting of branches on my face, the pounding of my heart. When I got to my car, I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. I didn't go back to that town. I left everything behind. My job search, my lease, all of it. I moved 3 states away, cut off contact with everyone from that town, changed my number, got a new email. And for a while, nothing happened. No dreams, no whispers, no tapping at the window. Until last week. I was walking past a construction site near my apartment. The city had just cleared out a stretch of land for a new complex. It smelled like pine. I glanced through the fence and saw a familiar shape standing near the tree line at the edge of the lot. Tall, thin, still, staring at me. It didn't move. But that night, I found something sitting at my front door. A stone, perfectly smooth, still warm. I didn't touch the stone. It sat on my welcome mat for hours, perfectly round, warm to the touch, just like the ones in the hollow. I swept it into a plastic bag with a piece of cardboard and threw it in the dumpster across the street. Then I drove 40 minutes to a different motel, checked in under a fake name, and waited to see if it would follow. It did. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the stone was on the motel nightstand, still warm. I called Bill again. He didn't answer. I tried twice more. Voicemail both times. Finally, he called back around 3 a.m. His voice was hoarse, raspy. He said, "They're not just spirits, they're memories, left behind, feeding." I didn't say anything. I think I just breathed into the phone like an idiot. Then he told me the real story, the part he hadn't mentioned before. Back in 1983, the county hired Bill to help clear a new hiking trail through the eastern ridge of Raven's Pine. But when they reached the hollow, the clearing with the stone circle, strange things started happening. Workers saw shadows that weren't theirs, heard their names whispered from behind them. One guy saw a photo of himself nailed to a tree, the exact outfit he was wearing that day, even though the photo was black and white. They called in someone from the Historical Society to investigate. The man told them it wasn't a natural clearing. The stones weren't random. They were placed intentionally. The circle was part of an echo ritual, an old, half-forgotten burial practice used by early settlers. The idea was that people could trap a soul inside a space by offering it a reflection of itself, an echo. Clothing, hair, voice, anything personal. But if the ritual was done wrong, or left incomplete, the echo would wander, searching, feeding off new reflections, off us. The settlers abandoned the site, covered it up, and for decades it stayed quiet, until the new trail disturbed it again. That's when the disappearances started. Bill said Carter Ellman wasn't the first. He was just the last before the park stopped publishing reports publicly. And then Bill said something I'll never forget. "It knows your name. It knows your shape. That means it's taken part of you." I asked him how to break the connection. He paused, then said, "You have to complete the ritual. Give it back what it took, the piece it's holding, and close the circle." I didn't know what that meant, but I had one clue. The stone. The next day, I packed my things again, drove all the way back to Oregon, checked into a motel near Raven's Pine, waited until dusk, and then I went back one last time. I took the stone with me, also brought something else, a mirror I had in my apartment. Not a hand mirror, a full-length old wooden one I had found at a thrift store years ago. Don't ask me why I brought it. Something told me it mattered. The park was colder than before. Not weather-wise, spiritually. Like the ground had gone sour. I stepped through the fence, into the woods, up the ridge, and into the hollow. The stones were still there. But this time, they weren't empty. Each one had something sitting on it, personal items, a hat, a baby shoe, a broken necklace, a Polaroid, echoes. The moment I stepped into the circle, the air changed. A sound rose up, like distant thunder, but wet, like something crawling just below the surface of the world. I placed the warm stone back in the center. Then I angled the mirror to face outward, so the entire clearing reflected behind me. At first, nothing happened. Then, movement. Shapes appeared in the mirror. Figures, blurry, pulsing. First one, then four, then dozens, Not people, not quite. Reflections. They circled behind me. I didn't turn, I couldn't. I heard whispers. Some were my voice, some weren't. All of them said the same thing. Give it back. Close the echo. Return the memory. Suddenly I understood. It wasn't the stone. It wasn't even the photograph. It was the moment, the feeling of fear, the memory of the lake, the imprint it left in me. That was the echo. I had to give it back. I knelt in the center of the stones and spoke. I told the story, everything, from the first night to now. I gave it all back, with my own words, and when I finished, I said one last thing. You can't have me. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every tree bent backward at once, like they were being pulled by a wind that wasn't there. A low, deafening sound filled the air. Not a scream, not a growl, but a silence so loud it shook my bones. And then, light, blinding, like the sun had cracked open behind my eyes. I passed out. When I woke up, it was morning. The clearing was empty. The stone circle was gone, and the path behind me was clear, like it had been freshly cut. I walked back to the trail. No voices, no shadows, just bird song. For the first time in weeks, I felt normal. It's been 4 months now. No dreams, no tapping, no warm stones, but I still don't trust mirrors. Sometimes, when I walk past them at night, I catch something moving that I know isn't me. Something a half second too slow, like it's remembering. I wish I could say that was the end, that I walked away from Raven's Pine and never looked back. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that echoes don't just fade, they change, and they wait. About 2 weeks after I left Oregon, I got a text from an unknown number. There was no message, just a single image. It was the same photo I'd found in the boot at the hollow. Me, standing in the woods from behind a tree. Except this time, the date had changed. Now it said, taken yesterday. I was in Nevada. Sartrom. I ignored it. I even got a new phone. New number. Tossed the old one in a canal. I tried everything I could to cut ties with that part of my life. But the next sign came quietly. I started seeing people who weren't really people. The first time was in a grocery store. I passed an old woman in the frozen food aisle. Nothing unusual at first. But as I walked by, she turned her head too fast, just like the man by the lake had, and whispered, "You left the door open." I stopped in my tracks, looked back. She was gone. The second time was worse. I was driving home from work late at night when I saw someone standing on the shoulder of the road. Tall, thin, staring at my car. I sped up. The next morning, I found pine needles tucked under my windshield wiper. I hadn't seen a pine tree in weeks. I called Bill again. No answer. I drove back to the diner where we first met. The waitress said he hadn't come in since the day he said he saw a ghost in the mirror. I checked local records, obituary section. Nothing. But I had this deep, crawling feeling I'd never see him again. Then, things got worse. I started forgetting things, where I left my keys, names of people I knew, entire stretches of conversation. One morning I woke up, and the walls in my apartment were covered in scratched words, written over and over again. I am not me. This is not my face. Close the echo. My hands were raw, fingernails cracked. I had done it in my sleep. That's when I knew whatever had taken root in Raven's Pine hadn't stopped. It had grown, and now it was using me as soil. Desperate, I reached out to an old anthropology professor I knew from college, Dr. Mayra Kettering. She specialized in folklore, ancient burial customs, and what she called spiritual migrations. I didn't think she'd believe me, but I sent her everything. The stories, the photo, a digital copy of the stone circle diagram I'd drawn after that night. She called me back within the hour. "You've done something irreversible," she said. "Echoes don't vanish. They replicate. When you completed the ritual, you didn't seal it. You moved it." I asked what that meant. "It's in you now. Not just haunting, hosting. Your memory is now a vessel. And if others witness that memory, it spreads." I didn't speak. Couldn't. Then she said something that nearly made me drop the phone. "How many people have you told this story to?" I thought about it. Bill, the waitress, a guy I vented to at a bar, this woman, 4 people, 4 new echoes. Mara said there was one possible solution. Not to destroy the memory, but to contain it, trap it the same way the settlers did. But this time, the echo wasn't tied to a place. It was tied to a person. To me. She called it a self-circle. A way to trap your own memory and seal it with a final witness. But the cost would be isolation. Complete, permanent separation from anyone who could mirror your thoughts. No family, no friends. No more speaking the story aloud, ever. If even one person heard it fresh, it would start again. And if you broke the circle, the echo would escape stronger. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't tell her I had already uploaded part of my story online, anonymously, to a horror forum. Within days, that thread had over 1,500 views. Then people started commenting. "Why do I keep dreaming of a stone circle? I swear I saw this same thing near my grandparents' farm. Did anyone else hear whispering while reading this?" That's when it hit me. It had already spread. My echo wasn't a parasite anymore. It was a virus. And then, the final message came. Slipped under my apartment door on a torn scrap of brown paper. "We remember you now." That night, I looked in the mirror again. Not on purpose, just habit. And my reflection was smiling. I wasn't. After that night, I stopped leaving the house. I unplugged the TV, turned off the Wi-Fi, covered every mirror with towels and duct tape. But I knew it was already too late. The echo wasn't hiding anymore. It was feeding. I started seeing myself in places I hadn't been. Security camera footage, reflections in car windows, even on a stranger's phone screen as they walked by. My face, staring back, expressionless. It was like my identity had been peeled off and worn by something else. I called Mara again. Her voice was calm, but tense. She'd been tracking what she called secondary echoes, subtle manifestations of the original memory taking shape in other people's lives. Symbols, voices, dreams. "You created a shared echo," she said. "An open loop. It doesn't just want you now, it wants witnesses." She said there was one last thing I could try. A witness circle. Something older than the stone ritual, rooted in oral tradition. A way to trap the echo inside a story, but only if the final version was complete, uninterrupted, and never repeated. Like closing a book you can't reopen. "Tell it once," she said. "To someone who will never tell anyone else. That locks the shape, seals it. If you tell it twice, the loop stays open. It grows." I asked her who could be the witness. Someone who believes, someone with no ties, no fear, and most important, someone who won't remember. That last part confused me, but she explained. Trauma often becomes permanent through memory. But if someone forgets the horror immediately after hearing it, the echo can't use that as fuel. It becomes a sealed echo, stuck in a loop with no voice. There was a drug she knew of, experimental, memory suppression. She had access to one dose, one person, one chance. I agreed. She flew in the next day. We met in an abandoned library near the edge of town. Broken glass, dusty shelves, no power. She brought a friend, a terminal patient named Henry, who had volunteered for her research years ago. No family. no digital presence. His mind was already slipping from a degenerative illness. He agreed to be my witness. He smiled the entire time, like he didn't understand what was happening. Mara injected the drug. 10 minutes later, I began. I told the whole story: Raven's Pine, the lake, the boot, the dreams, the circle, the whispering trees, the hand at the window, the stone on my doorstep, the second echo, the virus, the smiles that weren't mine, everything. And when I finished, Henry looked me in the eyes and said, "That's a good one. Now, what was your name again?" Mara nodded, silent, tearful. It had worked. The witness circle was complete. But there was one problem. As we left the library, I caught my reflection in the cracked glass of a display case. It was still smiling. Back at the motel, I sat in silence. Mara said I might still see residual echoes. Faint memories, she called them, flickers left behind. But if I told no one else, the loop would close for good. The next few days were quiet, peaceful even. I dared to hope again. I walked outside, ate at a diner, slept for more than 2 hours at a time. Then I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, just read your post on the horror forum. That story messed me up. Crazy thing is, I've been to that park." I froze. I had forgotten to delete the original post. 1,500 views had turned into 8,200. The witness circle had worked, but the echo virus was still loose. I deleted the thread, wiped every trace of it I could find. Forum caches, search engines, screenshots. But it didn't matter. It was already inside them. Mara called one last time. "It's evolving now," she said. "You didn't trap the echo. You gave it eyes." I didn't understand. "It doesn't need you anymore." Then she hung up. That night, I looked out my motel window. Across the street, standing under a flickering street lamp, was a figure. Not tall, not thin, just normal height, normal build, wearing my face, watching, waiting, smiling. It's been 3 months since I finished telling the story to Henry, and I've come to a conclusion I hate. There is no way to end this, not really. Deleting the forum post didn't matter. I still get messages from strangers, from burner accounts, from people claiming they dreamed of a circle of stones before they ever read my story. One guy emailed me a picture of his backyard. A smooth black stone had appeared on his porch, still warm. Another said his little sister looked him in the eye one night and whispered, "You're not you anymore," then went right back to sleep. These people live in different states, different countries. Some of them never read my post directly, which means the echo found another way. I've stopped using my name. I've stopped looking at mirrors, but I can't stop thinking. That's the worst part, because now I understand how it works. The echo doesn't just haunt a place, or a person, or even a memory. It becomes a story, and the moment someone imagines it, even for a second, they breathe life into it. That's all it needs. One moment of belief, and then it builds a shape. People think horror is about what you see. It's not. Horror is about what you can't unsee. That's why the echo chose a story as its new form. A story can't be undone. You can't unhear a story. You can't unremember an image burned into your brain. And now it has thousands of brains, maybe more. I haven't seen the reflection again in a while. Not clearly, but I know it's still out there. Because sometimes I catch people on the street staring at me just a little too long, their heads tilting slightly, the way the man at the lake did. Sometimes I pass someone and they say my name, even though I haven't introduced myself in weeks. And sometimes, worst of all, I hear tapping at my window. Second floor, no balcony, just the same sound over and over. Tap, tap. Tap. So, here's what I need you to understand. This story, the one I just told you, it's not a confession. It's not a warning. It's a mirror. And the moment you pictured it, the moment your brain built that lake, or saw that shadow behind the trees, or imagined the circle of stones in the dark, you opened a door, not for me, for it. And now, like me, you're part of the echo too. If you enjoyed this nightmare, like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.